What happens when a leader who should embody the strength and dignity of a nation turns a global stage into a personal spectacle? What we witnessed recently wasn't just a speech. It was a vivid portrait of the chaos that has taken hold of the country's leadership. A president who, standing before the United Nations General Assembly, failed to use the opportunity to demonstrate resolve, leadership, and respect. Instead, he chose to waste precious minutes complaining about a broken teleprompter and an escalator that stopped midway. This isn't just a curious detail, it's a symbol of the lack of seriousness with which the most critical issues are being treated. The speech, which should have been a chance to reaffirm the country's position on the international stage, became a jumble of disjointed, incoherent phrases packed with self-promotion. With every word, what we saw was a leader more concerned with portraying himself as a victim, claiming he was ignored, repeating that no one gives him due credit, than actually presenting solutions or inspiring confidence. And when someone in power behaves this way, the world notices. International leaders who should see the president as a reference instead find themselves facing someone who seems more interested in self-aggrandizement with invented titles and achievements than in leading a nation with firmness. This is the portrait of a government that not only fails in its management, but insists on using excuses to mask its failures. When it boasts of achievements no one recognizes, when it claims to have ended wars in a matter of months, or when it suggests it deserves international awards, what we have isn't leadership. It's a cry for attention. And this cry comes at a cost. It has cost the country's image. It has cost the credibility of our people in the eyes of the world. It has cost yet another opportunity to prioritize the interests of the population over personal interests. And it doesn't stop there. After the complaints about the teleprompter and the ridiculous escalator episode came the most absurd part: criticism of other countries, saying they are headed to hell, as if our own country were shielded from crises. The reality is harsh. Within our borders, the population faces economic hardship, families struggle with inflation, and insecurity grows every day. Yet the government's priority remains accusing others and touting non-existent achievements. In light of all this, the question remains: can we still take this kind of discourse seriously? Will the real problems, the ones that truly affect ordinary citizens, continue to be hidden behind grandiose and meaningless phrases? The UN performance was just another chapter in a long story of disconnect between what is said and what actually happens in the country. The continuation of the UN speech only exposed how far this government has lost touch with reality. Instead of using the podium to discuss global challenges and propose serious solutions, the president dove into a narrative of self-promotion, as if he were on an election stage. He declared himself responsible for ending wars, claimed to have single-handedly brokered historic deals, and even hinted that he deserved the Nobel Peace Prize. But the truth is, there is no international recognition for such feats because they simply don't exist. There was no active participation to support such credit. What there was, instead, was a calculated exaggeration to sell the image of a heroic savior, an image that convinces no one. Meanwhile, the country's problems pile up. Within our borders, the population watches as insecurity rises, the economy stagnates, and institutions weaken. Middle-class families struggle to pay their bills, small business owners fight to keep their doors open, and retirees see their purchasing power dwindle. Yet the president, instead of acknowledging these challenges, prefers to talk about a world going to hell and a supposed leadership that exists only in his mind. It's a clear attempt to divert public attention away from the harsh reality we face. And when he decides to address technical issues, the result borders on the surreal. At one point, he uttered the phrase, The form is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. This isn't just a linguistic stumble. It's proof that improvisation and lack of preparation can turn a serious speech into an international joke. And who pays the price? All of us. Because every clumsy word spoken from a global pulpit weakens the country's position and calls into question the seriousness of our diplomacy. Furthermore, the government insists on attacking so-called green energy, labeling it a scam that would lead countries to failure. This stance not only ignores the need to modernize the energy sector, but also isolates us from discussions that the rest of the world takes seriously. While other nations seek sustainable solutions to secure the future, the president insists on rowing against the tide, defending outdated interests and denying progress that could bring real benefits to the economy. Finally, the spectacle ended with the familiar tactic of inflating popularity numbers. He claimed to have the highest approval ratings when the data shows the exact opposite: a constant decline, rising rejection, and widespread discredit. In other words, the same pattern that has defined this government, creating a fictional narrative, hoping it will be repeated, and praying the population will believe it. But the truth is becoming increasingly evident. The UN speech is more than an isolated episode. It's a mirror reflecting the current state of the government, a spectacle of vanity, personal grievances, and disconnected phrases, while the country's real problems remain unsolved. Instead of presenting concrete measures to ease the burden of inflation, strengthen the economy, ensure security for families, and give hope to retirees, what we heard was a flood of self-promotion and attacks on other countries. This isn't leadership, it's desperation. It's an attempt to mask incompetence by blaming the rest of the world for failure. What's most concerning is realizing that this behavior isn't accidental. It's a strategy. Distract the population with catchy phrases, invent achievements that don't exist, and shift responsibility outward. But those who live here know the truth. The shopping cart doesn't lie, the electricity bill doesn't lie, the price of medicine doesn't lie. Meanwhile, the government prefers to talk about awards it never received and approval ratings that never existed. It's as if there were two parallel worlds: the real world, where people struggle to survive, and the world of fantasy, where the president places himself at the center of the universe. This disconnection not only embarrasses the country on the world stage, but also undermines internal confidence. When the leader uses the largest international platform to complain about an escalator and a teleprompter, the message is clear. The interests of the population are not the priority. They come last. First comes self-promotion, then personal whims, and only much later, if there's any room left, does the people's well-being come into play. This is the cruel portrait of an administration that prefers empty spectacle over true responsibility. That's why we need to look beyond the speech. We need to see what's happening inside our homes, in our cities, in our accounts. The government may try to construct a narrative of success, but the facts tell a different story. Unemployment, insecurity, high prices, weakened institutions, and leadership that grows increasingly disconnected. The UN speech isn't a communication error, it's a symptom of a government that can no longer hide its fragility, that tries to survive on sound bites while real life tightens its grip on workers and retirees. The world saw a lost president, but we see more than that. We see a government that has turned its back on the people. And every time this mask slips in public, credibility crumbles a little more. The problem is that it's not just his image at stake, it's the image of the entire country. And while he insists on living in his bubble of illusions, we are the ones paying the price for this disaster. It's time to see reality and stop falling for empty narratives. The people deserve more than a leader who turns the international stage into a vanity show. The people deserve seriousness, commitment, and respect.